Well, let's kick it off. Welcome back, guys, for the seventh session of the day with Don Wibier from TestCafe. Don will be talking about making web testing easy. Before we start, for those of you who not joined earlier, we have a Q&A at the end of the session. Drop your chats, drop your questions right in the chat. You can find the chat under the stage on the right-hand panel. I'll be going through these during the talk, so feel free to just ask your questions as and when they come up. Without further ado, pleased to introduce Don Wibier here at Breakpoint. Don comes in with a lot of experience. Fun fact, at the age of 15, Don built a ticketing and reservation system in Clipper for his father's cinema, for which he and his friend were compensated with a brand new 386 PC. After studying electronics and IT, Don embarked on a career in development, working with some of the biggest companies in Netherlands in developing multi-tier enterprise solutions. Working with an internet startup, he architectured one of the fastest online services for finding and booking airfares. Don then built one of the most user-friendly content management systems available, which continues to power hundreds of web and mobile implementations across the world. As a technical evangelist at DevExpress and TestCafe, Don is eager to share his knowledge and experience with you all. Don, over to you.
Thank you, Jay. And welcome everybody. Well, Jay did a proper introduction of myself, so I won't go any further into that. At the end of the session, if you have any questions later on, or you want to know certain things, my contact details are on the intro slide, and I'll put them on the end slide as well. So feel free to contact me through email, Twitter, whatever. I can be found. And now, we're going to talk about TestCafe. TestCafe is actually a product that we have developed in-house for our own testing facilities. So you might be familiar with DevExpress. We have a very rich set of UI controls, and we have that for different platforms. But at the moment, we have about 4 different web technologies that we support. And for that, it was obvious that we needed to do something with testing as well. So we decided that we should build something on Node.js, and it supports pretty much any browsers and any OSs. And the cool thing is that we don't need to install any plugins. So it is not based on WebDriver or Selenium technology. We are doing it all through JavaScript, and that makes it really easy for you to get started with it. So, well, as I mentioned it already, why should you use TestCafe? Well, the traditional testing software is quite complex to install, and if you want to test sophisticated scenarios, it is, in most cases, quite tricky to set it up. Most of those tools will require plugins like the WebDriver or some other plugins, which leads to issues when there are new versions of browsers installed or there are new browsers popping up. And probably you will need to configure the browser to accept certain things which come with the plugins and the WebDriver and so on. And that was something that we didn't like. So you even have to get familiar with the custom API to set up sophisticated tests. And then there is a price tag on the testing tools as well. And the cool thing with TestCafe is that you can install it within 30 seconds. So that means that you can actually start testing in 35 seconds. We don't require any plugin to be installed in any browser whatsoever. And it is also zero configuration. So we'll see in a minute how you install it and how you get started. The API is familiar because it's all based on JavaScript. So if you're doing front-end development, the chances are that you have a serious amount of JavaScript knowledge, and that makes it quite easy for you to get started with this API. It runs because of Node.js on any browser, any platform, any device, and it is 100% web-based. So there is no specific C library or whatsoever involved. It is pure JavaScript. And as you will see in this session, it is easy to learn and it is easy to get started with. All right, so enough about the introduction. Let's do a couple of tests and see how this actually works. And I didn't mention it, but TestCafe, we have that in 2 flavors. One is the open source. That's the one that I'm going to show you. And that's absolutely free. So there is no tricks, no hidden secrets there. You can just start using it on production projects. So that is for the short introduction here. I have set up a small, let me first show you the installation procedure. And for this, I will take you to the TestCafe website, which is hosted on GitHub, as you can see. If you go to devexpress.github.io/testcafe, you will get a comprehensive site with all kinds of documentation. It's got a cookbook, it's got testing recipes, and it's got everything to get you started. How do you get started? Well, just by opening a terminal and enter npm install min-g testcafe. That's all that's needed. I have already done that on my computer, so, well, we all know how that works, so I won't bore you with the installation, but it is, depending on your internet speed, less than 30 seconds. So once we have that installed, I have also set up a folder with a bunch of test scripts that I'm going to guide you through. I've done that in Visual Studio Code, and for that I have also set up a small test project. I'll show you the test project as well. It is, as I mentioned, quite simple, but it's got a couple of features in there which are really cool to test. So this is my test project, and, well, it is just a simple microblog site where you can put some stuff on. And the idea is, if you want to make a post, you should register. Once you're registered, you can put a post up, and you can put a reply on one of those posts as well, but that has to be approved by the administrator. So it is, as I mentioned, quite simple. But there are a couple of tricks here which makes TestCafe absolutely a charm to work with. So for this, let me get back to the Visual Studio Code with the scripts, and let's get started with the very first thing. And this is also what we describe in the website. Besides this test project that I've set up, we also have a test page which is available on our website, and you can use that to fire up your first test. And this is basically how a test looks. And as you can see, this test, I'm going to guide you through it. This test is just a JavaScript file. We support all the new JavaScript features. And one of the very cool things that we have is that we support the await and async construct in JavaScript. And this means that the script is actually waiting. Once it runs a test and it opens a page, the page needs to be loaded. It takes a bit of time. And because we are using this await and async construct, you never need to put in any delays or whatsoever, because this all runs asynchronously and we will take care of all the waiting and stuff. So that is absolutely a beautiful thing on the whole TestCafe exercise. So what we do here is we define a fixture. And then we open up the page that we want to test. And in this case, I will open up this page as well in my browser and show you how it looks. And it's just a small, simple page. Let me go here and open it up. The idea is we fill something in, and then we want to check whether that was filled in correctly. So if I go back to the code, we'll see that we just use our API, which is very simple to use. I'm looking up a control with a developer name ID. I'm putting in John Doe. Next, I'm going to hit a couple of boxes here. And in the end, I will submit. So I will click a button, the submit button here. And in the response, I will see if something is there, what I would expect. So this is a very simple test, and let me show you how you now how you're going to start the test. And for that, I will open up a terminal window. You could do it in Visual Studio as well, but I'd like to do it like this, and I can just run TestCafe. I want to test it on Chrome in this case, and I'm going to do the example. If I now hit enter, I do need to tell you that I need to move the browser, which is going to be used, to this screen. I've got a couple of screens set up, and it always opens up at the wrong screen. So here we are. TestCafe is now executing the test script. You will actually see that the page is loaded. It ticks a couple of things, and as you can see, the test has passed. And this is, in a nutshell, how simple it works. But let's take it a step further, because now I'm going back to my sample project, and I want to be able to test whether I can log on to the site or not. And I've set up a number of users here. I've got an admin. It's got a very difficult password. And I have another user as well, which we will see in a minute. And I can now check whether that admin has been logged on. If I would test this manually, I can go to my little test page. I'll hit login. I'll do admin at localhost. I'll put in the password, and what I'll do is, once you're logged on successfully, it will display the user here. So I'm going to check whether this element contains the local host. Well, it is pretty much the same as we did with the sample page. So I'll hit back to my terminal session, and here I will test and I will run this script. So again, I'm going to type some text in the email box. I'm going to type my password in the password box. I'm going to hit submit. And then I'm going to use the selector method to find an element ID, which is this. And I'm going to check the inner text. That should contain this. If that's not the case, something went wrong. So let's run it. And again, I need to drag that window back into that in my presentation screen. And here it is. And what you'll see is it opens my page, it replays the script, and it will check whether it could find that element, and it passed. So this is one of the things that you can test quite easy. But we're going to take it a step further now, because I want to log in. I'm going to take you to the next step in my scripts. What I now want to do is I want to log on as the administrator, and I'm going to put in a new post. And for this, I will do the same as I did before. And I'm going to put my credentials in. I'm going to hit the submit button. Then I will get a box where I can post some information, which will appear in the box. Last, I test if the title is something else. That's what I'm going to put in. So let's see if I run this. And on the next scripts, we're going to do it a bit more. We're going to do it a bit cooler. Let me run the script again. And what we'll see is that this post will also be available on the page, because it will be persisted in the database. So here we go. And it is now going to put in my new post, and it's there. and again, the test passed. So one of the other things that we can do is we can log on as the administrator. It's going to put up another post, and then I want to log in as a normal user. I created a second user as well already with another difficult password. And that is going to put in a reply on one of these comments. And as you can see, I will then log in as an administrator again, and I will approve that. You see? And with this, you can actually switch around with user credentials, and I'll show you a trick on how to TestCafe is able to save those environments as well. So you can easily switch from and to different accounts and do certain actions and so on. So if I would run this test, well, you can imagine that it will add another post. So if I would go back to my little application, which I had running here, let me see, where did I leave that one? It was here. If I would refresh the page, you'll see that there is another post which was inserted by the test. If I now run the test again, it will probably do a similar one. Oh, this was not what I wanted. It was the wrong one. TestCafe. I wanted. Well, let's test this time on Firefox. That can be done as well. I can also run several tests. I can also run several browsers. I'll show you that in a minute. At the same time. So I'm gonna now do the most complete test. It's gonna be run on Firefox. And it will be a surprise to see where Firefox pops up. And there it shows, obviously also on the wrong screen. And as you can see, it is now running Firefox for the test, so we can test any browser. I'm logging in as an administrator again. I will add another post. And I will also log in as the other user now and put in a reply. You see, and again, I'm logging in as an administrator again. And the administrator can activate the comment on the feed. So different roles in your application is definitely not a problem, because you can actually switch quite easily between the users in your application to test certain scenarios depending on your user rights. And if I would open up my screen here again and refresh this page, because this is just my page, then you'll see that something is here. And if I open up this one, you can see that it is there. You see, so it is very powerful this way to test certain scenarios depending on user rights. And because it is, again, all JavaScript, you can take your scripting a bit further. And normally, I would do this session in about an hour, but we have a bit less time. So I will guide you through a couple of scenarios here, and don't run the tests all the time, because that will not be enough here. I could actually use something as we support something like fixture events, or hooks basically. So before every fixture, we can execute a method. We can do that after each one, but we can also do it before every test and after every test. And what you can do with this is, for instance, if I open up another script, I can say before each test that I'm going to do, I'm going to be logging in this case, as localhost. Yeah, so in this case, I'll run the test. I don't need to log in anymore, but it will first call this method to do the credentials and the signing on. And with this, you can take that actually a step further, because you could also define something which is called roles. So if I would import the role from TestCafe here, I could set up a number of roles. So I don't need to set up those usernames and emails all over the project, all over the test project. But no, I can just define it here. And if I would run, or if I would want to use this, I can actually say use a role. In this case, it's going to be the admin user. I'm going to import the admin user from role. And I could do that also with the other user. So I could use the normal user as well. And in this case, my code is going to be reduced. And I'm going to have even more complicated scripts made simple and reuse a lot of stuff in my tests. So here you can see a combination. So the test that we did, which was the feed test 2, it is here using the use role administrator. We'll put in the post. We have a regular user here. It will log in as a regular user and it will do its thing right here. And in the end, we're going to use the administrator again. So this is another way of doing this particular test that I showed you. So this is a very powerful feature. The TestCafe tool will keep track of those credentials. It will keep track of those environments, basically, and it will allow you to switch really easy between those users and perform specific tests on that. You can even take this a step further, and you could create a proper page model, which will contain all your selectors. So maybe something is going to change. And if you would like to see this in action, if I export this page model, I could actually use it like this. So now, instead of using those hard-coded selector fields, I can use proper page models which will contain the constructs for those selectors, because it's all JavaScript. So with this, I think I have taken a really quick tour to the most asked features on TestCafe. And with this, there is also another feature that I'd like to show you. Since we are at the BrowserStack conference, I want to show you that it is also quite easy to incorporate BrowserStack testing in TestCafe. And for that, we have set up a plugin. I mean, TestCafe comes with a whole bunch of plugins. Most of them are developed by the DevExpress team because of questions that we get from our users. And one of the things is the BrowserStack example. So I'm gonna put up my slide deck quickly. So how can we use BrowserStack to test on a whole variety of browsers? I mean, BrowserStack has the biggest collection of all browsers, OSs, etc., and we can all access that remotely. There is a couple of things that you need to do here. First, you will need to install our TestCafe browser provider BrowserStack. And that will use our remote browser feature to execute browsers on the BrowserStack platform. Next, the least two environment variables that you need to set up are your username and your BrowserStack access key, and that can be found in the portal. I will obviously not be showing mine, but it makes sense that you can find them yourself in your own account. Next, we need to install two npm packages to the test project, and that will be obviously TestCafe with the minimum version, and again the TestCafe browser provider BrowserStack with the minimum version specified here as well. And if we would take a look at my Visual Studio code again, I have already set up a small example here where I have taken care of the environment variables. They're set up in my environment. I have a BrowserStack test file here. And in this case, we will be using the test page that I've been showing you on the first test, but it will be executed on the BrowserStack platform. So it is not really different from what you're trying to do here. This is stuff that we have pretty much already seen. Maybe there are a couple of other methods and selector functions included here. But if you would like to run this, I will first open up my BrowserStack portal. And what is interesting to see is that our team is also using BrowserStack to run tests. So what we'll see here is that on the left side, there is quite a bunch of colleagues of mine that run tests all over the place, and some will fail and some will succeed, but that's the life of a developer. And so in this case, what I can do now is I can open up my terminal again, and let me see what I needed to do. Yeah, now I can run my test Cafe BrowserStack. Pro, and then BrowserStack tests. If I'm correctly, this was the magic command, and if that is not the command, I will make sure that I'll find it. Yeah, let me have a really quick check, because for some reason I forgot to check what the command was. That is quite silly. I think it will go. Give me just one little sec here. I knew I forgot something here. Yeah, that is going to be obviously TestCafe. Min-B BrowserStack. Now, well, that is just too annoying to be true. I have run this test, and this was so nice. Let me test it one more time. Min-B BrowserStack. All right, so it is now running the test, and if I would open up my portal again, where was it? It should show up here in a minute. And we would see that the test will execute. And my test should be here somewhere. It's not showing up now, because what I need to do now is I needed to do this. I was quite close, I guess. So in this case, what we'll see is that BrowserStack will actually run the test. I'm not sure why it is not running here. Well, this is just too bad. Yeah, I probably know what it is. I didn't install the npm because I copied it out of my GitHub repository to run the test. And I was pretty sure I was giving the right command, but this is actually what's being done right now. So the BrowserStack plugin is being retrieved. It's going to be built into the test. And if I would now run this one, it should actually show up in my BrowserStack dashboard. And for some reason, well, this is always just annoying. Let me give this one more try. Did I make an error here? Browser. Yeah, I made an error here. I know what it is. Let me double check that everything is in place. I do want to show this, obviously. And here we go. And let's do it again. Well, let's switch over to the portal as well. And what we'll see is that it will now actually execute the iPhone 11 Pro environment on BrowserStack to run the test. And what we'll see is that here is the test. It is now going to run it on the BrowserStack systems. And what we'll see is that it will also, run the test. It will show what's going on, and we can actually see what the result of this test is. So this will take a couple of minutes, I guess. And what you'll see here is that it is also hitting all the tests in the fixtures. It is giving the descriptions here. And what you'll see is that everything is passed. If we want to review the test, we can just do that on the portal of BrowserStack. And in a minute, the screen record will be shown here in the portal to actually see what has been tested. Well, obviously the system is busy capturing the video and processing the video, but yeah, this will show up in a minute or so. What we can also see is that the test has passed. I have been doing the test, and that is pretty much all that you need to do to incorporate BrowserStack in your tests with TestCafe as well. And with this, I think we are it's about time to end the session. So with this, I will put up my thank you slide. I have put all the test scripts on my GitHub account. I have also put up my details again. If you have any questions after this conference, you can reach me by Twitter, by email, and also the test project that I have been using for testing the blog posts, etc. It is all on this repository on GitHub. Feel free to get it and test it, tweak it, use it any way you like. So with this, I hand it over to Jay, and let's see if there are any questions.
Awesome. Before we get into questions, everyone, I just want to give a quick announcement on the streaming issues that folks were experiencing. Hopin is looking at it right now, and I think they'll be looking into logs to make this will be fixed for tomorrow. But thank you for staying on. Many apologies for the issues. And yeah, we will be sure to send out an announcement and confirm sort of why this happened and make sure that it's not there for tomorrow. So let's get into questions. We have a question done about parallel test execution with TestCafe. How do you do it?
Well, there are obviously several ways of doing it. I didn't show it actually. My screen is still on, so I could actually, while we talk, I'll run a quick test.
Sure.
If I would, the way that TestCafe works, if you want to test locally, you need to have a machine which has like all the browsers that you support. They need to be installed on the machine. So if I would go up here and I would say TestCafe, and I'll do all, and I will do the first test. What will happen now is it will execute all the browsers that are configured on my machine, which is, pretty much all of it, except for Safari. You will see like a whole bunch of browser screens opening up here, and it's a miracle they all open up on my presentation screen. This hasn't happened to me before. This is great. But this is basically how it works. And what we were doing with the BrowserStack integration, it is the remote feature that we support as well. So you could also set up a, this is actually how a failed test looks. I'm not exactly sure what is failing here, but yeah, feel free to check it out. The remote feature that we use, that we can use, is excellent if you have virtual machines set up, and you could actually, execute it on a whole bunch of virtual machines if you have specific OS needs or specific browser needs. So there is like a variety of things that you can do there to distribute the load on your testing. And we have a cookbook. We have a testing cookbook recipe. I didn't show you that either. But please continue with the next question, Jay. I'll get the cookbook up in the meantime.
We have a few questions around what TestCafe supports. I think we had a question around TypeScript, but that's been answered. Thanks, Robert, for putting in that documentation link. Does TestCafe support C#?
Well, no, not for coding. I mean, the whole, it is a pure web UI testing tool. So we can use TestCafe to test Blazor apps, but the script that you need to write is either JavaScript or TypeScript. No C#. So
we have a question that just got popped in. Often in a test, I need to wait for requests to complete. Submit/save, for example. How easy is it with TestCafe? How about stubbing, spying, mocking of the request? Can you demo it?
Can you demo it? Well, the thing is, I can't demo it that quickly, I guess. But what is really a very nice point with TestCafe is that you basically don't need to wait, or you don't need to build in delays or whatever because the submission takes too long. The beautiful thing here is that we are using the await constructs, and TestCafe itself, it will check, and it will make sure that if the submission takes some time, it doesn't stall or it doesn't get upset about it. It will just wait until the response is there, and it will continue. So there is actually no need to build in specific delays or whatsoever. I hope that answered the question. And as you can see here, by the way, in the documentation center, we have a whole bunch of very nice guides. We have recipes on how to do certain things, how to test Angular components, how to use it with Gulp, Grunt, all kinds of deployment systems. We have it all written out for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Don, for taking that live. Question, is it available with Selenium IDE?
No. It is not. It is definitely not compatible with Selenium. It doesn't work with Selenium, and it is not based on Selenium. What we do have is something that you are seeing here. This is TestCafe Studio. This is a tool which is more geared towards testers which are not necessarily JavaScript developers. The way that works, and this is, by the way, a commercial product, so this is also why I didn't point it out during the presentation, but with this tool, you can record a certain test, and you can, if we do it here, I think I've got a test here. It will create a similar JavaScript in the end, and you can actually have a visual way. If I go here, I think, let me see. Did I create something here? Yeah. You can you'll have a visual way of putting in assertions, click on certain elements here, you see. So this is a very powerful tool for people that are not necessarily JavaScript developers. And this is pretty much our IDE. It will produce a JavaScript file next to this file, and the JavaScript file is similar to what I've shown you. So that runs right on TestCafe Open Source. This is obviously a commercial product, but yeah, you can check out our website what the prices are on this.
Awesome. Question: is there a way to integrate TestCafe into the pipeline and see the results of the report within that pipeline, for example?
Absolutely, absolutely. If we check out the documentation section on the TestCafe website, we have the recipes, as I mentioned earlier. We have a section which is called integrations. I'll make it a bit bigger so you can read it a bit more clearer. We have a section with integrations here. So we have all kinds of documentation on how to integrate with various build and deployment systems. We also have the way that TestCafe by default produces its errors. You've seen it in the command line. We have also plugins available to report it in a different way, so you can actually have you can integrate it with any build pipeline, no problem.
Awesome. We have some questions comparing, sort of asking for comparison of with TestCafe and WebDriver.io.
Yeah.
Cypress. What are the advantages of TestCafe over these?
Well, I think one of the biggest advantages is that you don't need to install any WebDriver or plugins. It is totally plugin free. It is plugin free on the clients. It is plugin free on the server. It is Node.js. It allows you to do all things in your tests that you can do with Node. So maybe you want to feed in a file with data and run tests based on that. Well, if Node.js is able to read in an Excel file or a CSV file, you can just hit tests by executing that. And that makes it very flexible, but it also makes it very easy to learn, because the API that we provide is quite simple. It is really straightforward. And yeah, if you're already doing front-end development, it's not really difficult to get started with this stuff. It's just the technology that you're used to. And that's, I guess, the biggest benefit compared with the competition. It is just too easy to get started with.
There's a question around, is it possible to call another program with TestCafe, for example, authentication?
Of course. I mean, if you can execute, well, if you can access that by Node.js, which you probably can, you can definitely do that. I have shown you some code on how to set up authentication yourself, but if you want to do, if you have to use something, well, this is one of the examples. If you want to test a website that is using reCAPTCHA, we have it all written out on how to test certain things for you. And you can even get the CAPTCHA approved. So yeah, it's absolutely possible.
There's a question around support for simulating mouse movement. Is that possible?
That is no problem. Yeah, we also support gestures on mobile devices, and that also is available. Yeah.
we had a few questions around the integration with BrowserStack. Guys, I have popped in the documentation for that in the chat, so you can you can check that out. And
thank you for that. Yeah.
If you can use you can test on different versions of the browser. I think you can follow along on the documentation, and it should sort of guide you through that process. Any other?
Absolutely.
Can we do assertions with database by using TestCafe?
Well, yeah, if you can set up a connection with your database between Node.js and the database, yeah, you can obviously do that. I have talked with developers that are using TestCafe for things that we didn't even think about. They're testing complete different things, but the cool thing is that you can just run that script and do something with the results and put in assertions and yeah, you don't necessarily need to use it for UI testing, though we decided to do UI testing, but you can do it with database testing as well if you want. Yeah.
Awesome. A few final questions. What's the licensing like with TestCafe? How do you support new development?
Well, as I mentioned before, TestCafe, the TestCafe framework is open source, and that means that you can use it as much as you want on as much projects as you like. There is no money involved in getting started with that. The only commercial thing that we have is, as I mentioned, TestCafe Studio, and well, I'll show you the website for that as well. You can test it out for 30 days. Pricing is also somewhere here. Obviously, I'm not a salesman, so I can just play around with this stuff, and I don't know anything about prices. Excuse me for that. Yeah, so TestCafe Studio is $250 a year. That is our commercial product on TestCafe. That's the studio. It includes community support. It includes 12 months of free updates. If you want to go for our super DevExpress technical support, you'll have to pay a bit more for that. And then we'll answer all of your questions. And we even make sure that you can run the tests that you want to run. So this is definitely worth the money anyway. But that's our pricing model. And TestCafe Studio is a per seat license. So if you have 10 testers, you'll need to have 10 of those licenses. And if you have 10 testers, you will contact me or one of my colleagues to get a discount, because we do that as well. So that's the costs.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. We are out of time for questions. I think there were a couple of questions that weren't answered. If you can address them in the chat, but it was amazing having you on here at Breakpoint. Thank you for showing us how TestCafe works and showing us the nitty-gritties. Thanks, Don.
You're absolutely welcome. It was a pleasure to be on the conference and to show some cool stuff about TestCafe. And yeah, I would encourage everybody to at least take a look at it.